Hi, this is JPlays and we're back with another guide. In a video a long time ago, I shared about various tools and resources where I, among others, mentioned the effective path spreadsheet. And for a long time, I've been wanting to make a dedicated video on the subject. So, in today's video, we are diving deeper into a specific resource that is fantastic and which I've been heavily requested to make a video guide about, the Great Effective Path Spreadsheet. And if you're completely new to this, let's just briefly recap on what the effective path spreadsheets are. Well, they're basically an ever-growing tool for tower optimization, which evaluates your current build and suggests next upgrades to complete. It was created by Matthew with the involvement of many more, which I'll include the names of on screen. And if you see these guys around on Discord or Reddit, be sure to thank them for all their hard work. So starting out, you simply want to navigate to the link where the spreadsheet is shared, and I'll include this in the video description as well. Once you've accessed that link, you want to make a copy of it and save this wherever you want it in your Google Drive. I recommend making a folder for effective paths because you'll soon see that you'll end up with a handful of spreadsheets. And so this ensures that you get things easier organized. And then, let's just briefly cover what the main tabs are in this spreadsheet, though we will cover these in greater details later on. First, we got the Homepage tab, which primarily shows the version history and some key frequently asked questions and answers. Importantly, you'll also see listed here if there are newer updates available, and in cell A4 you can click the link to grab the latest version. Then there's the IDS, or technically it's short for Identifiant, but we can call it IDS for simplicity, which we'll get into more details. But basically, over time, as the whole resource grew in terms of its calculations and inclusions, some of the additional data considerations such as modules, relics, and so on, they got moved to separate sheets. And we'll go through each of these shortly. To some, especially those that were used to the old spreadsheet that contained everything, this may be confusing, but it is ultimately something that will benefit you and the continued growth and enhancement of this resource and all the subtools that are being created for it. And similarly, if you used the effective path sheet a long time ago, you will know that this master spreadsheet used to be the main place to input data. And it is still optional to do so, but as you will see, I recommend using the separate IDS sheets because that gives you access to a lot of additional subtools as well. So for most of this video, we'll be ignoring this tab, but it will anyways automatically populate later on. And then we got the effective health, effective damage, and effective econ tabs. And these are the main output of the effective path spreadsheets, the recommendations for your health, for your damage output, and your coin income. And we'll analyze these in greater detail once we have covered everything that you first need to input and set up. And so I recommend utilizing separate IDS documents for a better modular approach, or child sheets as you can call them. And this also ensures that you get the best and proper use of all the subtools that exist. So before we even get started with any actual tower data input, let's link all the IDS sheets. In other words, let's link all the child sheets. First, we will set up our IDS master sheet and connect all the other sub-child sheets to it so that they're all properly talking to each other. So click on Copy Me in cell B4 to make a copy of the IDS master. Then in the IDS master, you want to copy the sheet ID. So click Copy and go back to your effective paths and paste the ID here. After doing so, you will likely see a ref error on the right, but you just have to hover over that and click to allow access. Okay, so now we've set it up so that the effective paths is connected to the IDS master. Next, we will be creating all the additional spreadsheets. So what you're going to do next is click Copy Me and create all these documents. There's going to be 10 sheets that you're going to be creating. So click Copy Me on each and every one of those. Then you want to locate the IDS tab for each of those spreadsheets that you've just created. And you'll see this stated in cell C4. So you copy that, go back to the IDS master, and input it for the respective sheet. Again, you might see a ref error here, the way you have to just allow access. And then you rinse and repeat and do that for all the sheets. Then what we will do next is we are going to be adding the IDS master sheet ID to all the new sheets as well, so that they speak with each other. So in the IDS master, copy the D4 cell, then navigate to all the sheets again and paste the IDS master ID in cell C6. And voila! Once you've done that for all the sheets, you're good to go. You've set up. Importantly, We will next just set it up so that we can easily update any spreadsheet in the future with as much minimal effort as possible. So navigate to any of the sheets that you've just created, such as the module sheet or whichever. On the IDS tab, you will see the import data using add-on. Click that URL, because what we're doing is we're going to be downloading the sheet extension called the Tower Import Data. In my case now, you'll see that it's installed already, but just click install and follow the steps to complete the installation. What you've now done is that you've made this extension accessible in any spreadsheet, which will enable you to update the sheets easily. So you can click on extension in the menu, you hover over the Tower Import Data, and you can click import data whenever there's a need for an update. And you may notice that you need to refresh your sheet in order to see this extension visible. And that's it. Now you have an easy way to update all your sheets whenever a new version releases. And we'll talk a bit more about this later in the guide. And so it may not seem like we've accomplished much at this point, but you have essentially built an ecosystem of sheets that automatically communicate and update each other where relevant. And as we get into the respective sheets to start filling in our actual tower data, you want to note the following about color coding. The red colored tabs are tabs that require input. The blue color tabs are additional subtools that can help you organize or calculate certain things further for your tower. And the green color tabs are static information, such as infographics and raw data tables. With that out of the way, we can now finally proceed to input our own tower data and learn about the subtools. And once we have inputted all of our tower data, then we will proceed to analyze and learn more about the optimization recommendations that the main effective path spreadsheet produces for us. Let's go! So as a first, let's get started with labs. At this point, you should already have a copy of the lab IDS sheet, likely called copy of laboratory something, unless you've renamed it, and we can now finally input our lab-related data. And so we'll jump into the red master sheet tab for labs. And so then we just open our game and go through our labs and input the data accordingly in the level column. When you do that though, keep in mind that the lab researches you see in game is the level you're getting if you're leveling it one more time. So if you see defense percentage as level 24, it means your lab is level 23. So if you haven't already, pause the video and input all of your lab levels. You don't need to input anything for the target column for now, but you can do that too if you want to, or already have some specific goals in mind for certain labs. Okay, great job putting this information in. This will be very relevant later for the optimizer to recommend your next lab priorities. And what you can already take notice of are these various blue-colored lab subtools in the subsequent tabs, which can be great resources for personal planning and learning more about lab durations and requirements. In the lab calculator, you can among others assess the duration of labs, and later, once we add the relics, the lab speed from relics bonus will also be included here, so just keep that in mind that the duration is not accurate yet. However, what you can do immediately is just set the lab speed to your default lab speed multiplier in cell B2. In column C, you will see the lab levels that you have inputted earlier. Don't change or manually edit the numbers in column C here, because you much rather want to only change this in the lab master sheet. That way, you avoid having more than one place to update your lab levels in the future. And you will see if you have accidentally done this by the number being bolded and underlined. That shows that the linking to the master lab sheet is broken for that cell. To fix that, you can either undo your changes, or if that's not possible, you can drag the formula from the cell below it as they are numbered in order, or even manually by fetching the formula below it. In column D, you can see the maximum level that can be reached for the given lab. And in column E, you can see what milestone is needed to be reached to unlock a specific lab. If this is blank, it just means that the lab is always available. In column F, you will see the actual real-time duration it will take for you to complete one level upgrade. What this column does is taking into consideration your lab speed and the lab speed multiplier that you've specified in cell B2 to show you what the actual duration will be to complete one level. In column G, you see the coin cost for one more level upgrade. In column H, you see the gem cost if you were to rush the lab with gems. And column I to K does the same, but just for one more level. So basically, if you were to upgrade your lab with 2 levels. Then column L relates to the target level that you may have inputted in the master lab sheet. And then the column M, N, and O show the related duration, coin cost, and gem rush cost to reach the target level. Or if your target level is blank, then it shows the duration and cost to max the lab. Also, it's worth pointing out that once you have maxed a few labs, you can clean up your view by enabling to hide maxed labs in cell E1. Sometimes though, in order to make this work, you first have to choose none and thereafter max. And if you wanted to, you could also hide labs where you have reached your target. Personally, I've never had a need for that, but it is an option you can be aware of at least. And then let's move on to the lab planner. In the lab planner, you can slot in whatever labs you're planning to do ahead. Here, you also want to make sure to input the lab speed multiplier in the corner of each lab, so in cell G2, O2, and so forth. In the columns for the lab names, such as column E, you input the desired lab, and you can either choose this from a drop-down or you can type it out. By default, the lab planner will assume you're planning to max your chosen lab, but you can change this in the end column, and it would automatically get the correct value for the start column from your lab master sheet that we inputted earlier. And if you input duplicates, you will basically get a color warning by making your cells light blue. You will also be provided with estimated daily coins required to sustain the labs that you've planned to complete. And you're given some customization options, such as whether to show total lab coin cost, daily cost, or lab rush cost, and more. And so overall, it can be a nice tool for planning. Then we got the lab boost calculator, and here you can calculate what lab speed multiplier boost you can afford. Simple as that. And then we got the interactive thorns tab, and this is a neat tool that shows you how many wall hits it takes for you to kill elites, bosses with plasma cannon, and elites with plasma cannon mastery. Most of this data will be populated once we finish the other child sheets, but you can already input whatever thorn substat you may have on your armor module, if any. And then we have a tab for enemy level skips battle condition reduction. And this is simply a tool that shows you the impact of the battle condition reduction lab on enemy level skips. Simple as that. And then our final tab in our lab child sheet, we got the elite spawn cap tab. This is a graphic that depicts the cell average and spawn chances for elites across the various tiers. And so this could just be nice to look at and be aware of at times. Then we want to proceed with the workshop child sheet that you should already have available. Again, here we want to jump straight into the master sheet tab. And here we simply input the workshop levels in column D and the level you're able to reach in a run with cash in column E. And you also got to make sure that you properly unlock each workshop by toggling them on in column B. So next, input your workshop upgrades and your workshop enhancements and ignore all the other data to the right of the workshop enhancements. All this information will be populated automatically, and we don't want to break the formulas and automation by manually typing in here. And you can already tell that we're seeing some of the lab levels that we put in earlier in the lab sheet visible here already. And the reason that some of these things are shown here is because they're used for some of the blue tab tools. Okay, so fill in the workshop upgrades and the workshop enhancements, and you may pause the video while doing so. Okay, great, done. Now let's move on to the workshop subtools. First, we got the gold box calculator, and this calculates at which waves your workshop stats will be gold box without spending cash. And same as before, don't worry about these stats being 100% accurate now, as they will be once we have completed all the sheets. So don't manually override anything here, except for the maximum waves, you can input that already. Next, we got the enemy level skip enhancements return on investment calculator, and it simply calculates the best return on investments for your enemy level skips and your enemy level skip enhancements. And there are two values here that you can manually add already that doesn't use a formula. So you can add to the average wave to max your enemy level skips, and you can add the average maximum for your wave count. Then we move on to the coins plus versus enemy level skips plus. And here we can put in all the values in the user input section. So including, can you max enemy level skips mid-run? At what wave do you die? At what wave do you max enemy level skips? Do you die to enemy damage or enemy HP getting too high? The wave count you're at, roughly 500 to 1000 waves before you finish your run. Coins at the same time as that. The end screen wave count, and the end screen coins. All of this will later help input the coins plus versus the enemy level skips. And then finally, we have the workshop enhancement prices. And this is simply a table with all the cost for the workshop enhancements. Simple as that. And then we're on to ultimate weapons. Again, as with all the other child sheets, you should have an existing sheet for the ultimate weapons already, as we have linked it to the master ID file. So then we jump straight into the master sheet for ultimate weapons. Here, simply input the details of your ultimate weapons. Please keep in mind that you're inputting the raw ultimate weapon data, excluding labs and substats. And if you're unsure of what the value is, you can find out by just comparing the stone cost for your next upgrade in the game compared to the dropdown in column G. In this sheet, you also gotta be sure to toggle on all the ultimate weapons that you have unlocked, which you do in column C, and you enable the ultimate weapon plus abilities simply by leveling up the respective ultimate weapon plus. And as before, do not add anything to the sections that are meant for formulas from labs and modules, as these are all auto-populating and we don't want to break the synchronization. So pause the video and input all your ultimate weapons data. Okay, with that out of the way, let's just briefly check the ultimate weapon subtools. First, we got the ultimate weapon cost calculator, and this neat subtool is helpful for planning and understanding the stone cost required to upgrade the ultimate weapons. And while you can override any information you want here, be aware that if you do so, you would break formulas that update according to your ultimate weapon master sheet. The main things that you ideally want to input manually are the stones owned currently in cell D4, the number of ultimate weapons wanted in cell H3, the number of ultimate weapons plus wanted in cell K3, and the respective ultimate weapon target values in column I. So for example, increasing the chain lightning damage, which will cost me this amount of stones. And then in cell D4, it will show me the total stones missing. So yeah, a pretty nifty tool to play around with for your stone cost. Then we got the GT Plus and GT Duration tab. And this subtool helps you calculate whether upgrading your normal Golden Tower duration or your Golden Tower Plus has the best return on investment. And most things here will populate automatically, such as the GT duration module substat, which will be automatically fetched from your module child sheet once we add that later. However, note that the Wave Accelerator Mastery Lab level is currently not a linked cell with a formula, and so it's there for something you would have to input manually. In the future, I'm assuming they make this cell automatically based on your card sheet though, but yeah, put this in manually. And also note that you manually want to input the following: the start of a good coins per hour wave and the end of a good coins per hour wave. Then next we have two green tabs to look at. The Chronofill Plus tab, which gives you more information and data on the chrono loop and how it works. And then a tab that consists of all the raw ultimate weapon stats. And that's it for the ultimate weapons sheet. Next we got the themes and songs child sheet. And here we're navigating to the red input sheet for themes and songs. And you will simply be toggling the themes and songs that you have in column B, in column E, and column K. Don't touch the total bonus section as this is automatically calculated. So you have to navigate to your themes menu in the game and go through this, and you will be able to find their names, and sometimes it also will specify if they were unlocked at a given milestone unlock and so forth. So tick them off in the sheet. The first time you do this, it may be a bit tedious and time consuming to do so, but thereafter it will be much quicker to update. And keep in mind that the songs refer to the 3 songs that you can purchase in the medal event for medals. And the Guardians refers to the Guardian skins that you can purchase in the guild event for guild tokens. Okay, so if you haven't already, pause the video and input yours. And then finally, you'll see this green tab called Events Timeline. That tab shows you the historical events that have been in the game. In column B, you can see when an event has been a rerun of a previous event, and specified in italics if the respective items have been available at previous similar events. But okay, so we have just gone through the most time-consuming child sheets to complete the first time, so great job. The rest of the sheets are going to be faster and easier. So now we're on to the bots, and same drill as before, we're navigating to the master sheet for the bots. By now, this will look and feel similar to other things we've already inputted, such as when you inputted your ultimate weapons. You want to make sure you have toggled the bot as unlocked in column C, and then you want to specify your level in column G. And similar as we did for ultimate weapons, we're inputting the raw bot levels, ignoring relics and lab bonuses. And you can confirm your level by comparing the bot's medal cost in your game screen versus the drop-down options in column G. So for example, if my golden bot cooldown may say 69 seconds in the game, but by taking a look at the cost of my next cooldown upgrade, I see that it costs 580 medals to upgrade my next golden bot cooldown. I then know that my raw golden bot cooldown level is actually level 13, as that's the level where the next upgrade cost is 580 medals. And again, as always, since the data from the various child sheets are connected to each other, we do not add anything for labs, relic, vault and modules here. We don't want to override the connection with our other sheets, and these will be auto-populated later. You should already be able to see the lab-related data populated here. And the rest will show later once we have completed all our sheets. And the reason why we're seeing some of these stats here is because they are communicating with the stats from the bots to form the blue subtools, which we'll get into next. But first, pause your video and put in your bot stats. Okay, done. Now let's check out the golden bot path. This subtool shows you the most efficient golden bot upgrade path, but of course keep in mind that you want to be careful of trusting any recommendations until you finished all the sheets. And it goes without saying that you anyway should be careful about optimizer suggestions, as there may be various scenarios or caveats it does not consider. In my case here, I don't have much left to do with the golden bot, but yours might look very different. And similarly, we also got a similar subtool for the amplify bot. And then we have two green tabs with some extra information. We got the all bots, which is simply a static sheet that gives all the breakdown details of the bots and their upgrades. And we got the golden bot cooldown table that shows the breakdown of golden bot cooldowns between the labs and medal upgrades. And this can be particularly helpful to refer to if you're keeping your golden bot synced with the ultimate weapons and need to plan your lab levels and medal costs to ensure sync. And that's it for bots. Then we're on to relics. And I know that all of this can be tedious and a bit time consuming to get set up the first time. But that honestly also shows the value of this optimizer tool, the effective paths, because it considers so many different aspects of your tower. If it merely was concerned with only a handful of your tower upgrades, it naturally would not be able to show nearly as good recommendations as it can, which we'll get to very soon. And this relic sheet is quite straightforward and similar to the sheet we have previously inputted for themes and songs. Here we simply toggle the relics that we have acquired in column G. In the past, to add a new relic, you could simply select a row, copy it, insert it below everything else, and adjust accordingly. However, with the new sheet add-on update feature, this should not really be necessary to do manually ever again. So again, maybe pause the video and input your relics. Great, and as you can also see, you see your total bonuses on the side. But now we're done with the relics and on to the vault. For the vault sheet, you simply toggle the vault upgrades that you have made in the harmony tree and the power tree by toggling the respective boxes on, and that's really it. And if you have not yet unlocked the vault by earning keys by placing rank 15 or above in Legend Tournament, chances are that you won't find much relevance from this sheet for a while. But having it at least linked, as you've already done, is just a bit more future-proof in case it ever becomes relevant for you in the future. Next, let's get on to cards. Again, in the card child sheet, we're navigating to the red master sheet for cards and inputting our card details. At the top, you input your card slots acquired with gems, and thereafter in column C, you are unlocking and specifying the star level of your cards. And in column D, you're specifying if you've unlocked card mastery for the respective card. As always, ignore the sections for the vault and the labs, as this is already auto-populated and connected to your vault sheet and the labs. So pause the screen and input your cards. There we go, let's move on to card presets. So here we simply want to input our card presets, at least the two first, for farming and for tournament. You don't need to worry about setting the third, fourth and fifth at this point, or ever if you don't want to. So if you haven't already, pause the video and put in your cards. Great, then we're on to explore some blue card tools. So first off, the card and mastery tracker, and this gives you an overview of your card completion and the gems required, and the stones required for card masteries. And yes, that is a crazy amount of stones needed. In order to get accurate updates of how many cards you're missing though, you need to put in your card progress in column L, where you specify how many duplicate cards you have at the current starter level. In my case, since all of my cards are level 7, it's not relevant, but if you had your cards at level 3 or something else, you want to put in the amount of duplicates you have here. And here you also have a personal priority list. It doesn't change anything, but it's where you can just dabble and organize what you think are the main priorities when it comes to card masteries and your unlock order. And for unlocked masteries, it gives you an overview of the cost for the next mastery level. Then we got the Wave Accelerator Intersprint Mastery tool. This tool lets you add the run wavelength and mastery lab levels for Wave Accelerator and Intersprint, simply so you can compare the enemy coin per wave for each and collectively. So that may help you prioritize one over the other once you're ready with mastery. And then finally, we got the Wave Skip Mastery, which shows you an overview of your wave skip chances with Wave Skip Card Mastery. And that's it for the cards. Let's get on with modules. And now we're on the penultimate sheet. Yay! In this master sheet for modules, since we have connected the labs and vault already to this sheet, there is nothing we need to do here. Don't manually type anything, as it is automatically fetched from the lab sheet and the vault sheet respectively. And again, if you type on top of it, you will break the formula. But so with that out of the way, let's instead move to the modules inventory. And here we simply want to input all the stats for our modules. In column C, you specify the highest level, which means that you don't need to input any module level in column F, K, P, and so forth, because you can see it already fills those in. But the reason why you're seeing 60 here for a moment is because I haven't inputted the ancestral yet. And using this astral deliverance as an example, you want to pick the module rarity in cell E5, and then you want to choose the substats in here in E7 to E14. And thereafter you pick the substat rarity in column F. And then you rinse and repeat this for all the modules. So while I'll do mine, you can pause your screen as well to fill in all your modules. Again, hang in there, we're almost done. However, I don't want to bother filling in modules that I don't use, so I've just filled out the ones that I actually use for tournament and farming. And you may do the same as well. Because next is the reason why we're filling out our modules, especially for our farming and tournament modules. And that is the modules presets. Here we have to specify our farming and tournament modules. And because you set everything up in the module inventory, all you have to do here is just simply pick the name and you get everything populated. And so just be sure to set it up for both farming and tournament. And the reason we're doing this is so that we can toggle between tournament build and farm build on the main effective path spreadsheet later. Okay, great, all done. Now let's look at some of the subtools for mods. We got the mods obtain, which is a neat tab that simply summarizes your current unique module situation. And this can be particularly useful to use as a screenshot to share with your guild or others about your module situation. And so the only thing you want to manually input here is how many you've pulled of each module in the gray area. And then you have the reroll calculator, which can help you get an idea of the rerolls required for respective desired effects. Here you simply manually fill in the amount of slots unlocked for the respective module type in column B and the respective module rarity. And there's no need to manually type in the amount of effects banned, as this is automatically fetched from your lab's data. So yeah, that's pretty cool. And finally, we got the green tab for module substats, which is simply an overview of all the substats in the game. And then we're on the final child sheet, the guardian sheet. Yay! And again, we're on the master sheet, and here you simply just input the respective guardian chip levels in the master sheet. You input this in column F. You will see though that unlike the ultimate weapons and the bot master sheets, there is no drop-down values, but you will see the effect in column E, so you may just have to try a bit to get the correct values for yourself. So after you put those stats in, we can move on to the subtools. And these subtools are all just focused on the efficient path of these respective guardian chips. So the steel path, you'll see like this. You'll have the same for the ally path. Same for the attack chip path, and the same for the fetch chip path. Yay, so you've done it. We've inputted all the data, well, almost. And so you've basically done it. And you've now connected all the sheets and you've inputted all of your tower data. And so we can finally proceed to look at the optimizations. But before making our way to the effective path sheet, let's just take a quick look at this IDS master for 1 second. Because here you will now see that it has populated some totals in column F, such as your total labs done, your total stone spent, total relics owned, and so forth. And taking just one step back, a key thing to note about the effective path spreadsheet is that they are constantly evolving and being updated. And there may be more IDS and so-called child sheets in the future, such as one focused on player or the tiers or milestone rewards and perk wave reduction and so forth. And so what this means is that you may want to keep an eye out for when updates are released to ensure you have the up-to-date version. However, at the same time, they've made it really easy to see what the new updates entail and what version you're on compared to the latest. All this you can see on the homepage on the effective path spreadsheet, and there is a link there in cell A4 for the latest publicly available version. And cell A7 and below may outline versions that have been made since your current version, and thus additional aspects that your current sheet does not currently have. And so you can take note of that. I would recommend to simply don't feel the urgency to update your details immediately every single time there is an update. However, nowadays there is no tedious manual re-entering of data needed to keep your sheets up to date. Which brings us back to the topic of, so how exactly does the add-on work that we added earlier in terms of updates? Well, what the solution does is that it uses anchors to check a whole range dynamically, so when the authors of the effective path spreadsheets add a new relic, it's automatically taken care of, or if a new lab is added to the game, or a new theme, or whatever, their script will handle such things. But a key thing to note though is that you have to run the update for each child sheet that you want to migrate or update. And so you would go to extensions, scroll down to tower import data, and then import data. And I'll add some text on the video to further explain how exactly this process works. But okay, enough chit chat. Time to make our way back to where we started a long time ago, the effective path spreadsheet and its recommendations. And we will first start off with the effective health tab that focuses on your health optimizations. As a start, the first time you encounter this tab, you want to make some changes and inputs. You want to update the running time lab speed multiplier in cell L5 to whatever your lab speed multiplier is usually at. And you want to toggle on relevant checkboxes in column AF. For example, if you have max recovery and wall unlocked, then be sure to toggle those on. And toggle the chronofill on if you have permanent chronofields. And toggle the death wave health if you're maxing this in run. And toggle chain thunder if you have it, but please note it is largely useless until you have CL+. And similarly, you want to toggle on or off the perks that is relevant for your farm runs. Then you have some additional inputs that are only relevant in some circumstances. You got the enemies attack together, which is a metric used to assess the effectiveness of defense absolute. But since most of us don't really care about defense absolute, it also means that you can largely ignore this one. Then we got the chain lightning damage does percentage of total damage. And this is only really relevant once you have both chain thunder and the chain lightning plus. So again, you can ignore changing this if that's not relevant for you. And then lastly, the ignore target levels. As the name suggests, turning this on ignores the target levels that you may have set in your lab master sheet for each respective lab. In most circumstances, I would suggest ignoring target levels so that you get the best proper picture of optimization upgrades. Otherwise, you may end up in a situation where you forget about a target level and completely neglect a certain lab and get inaccurate recommendations as a result. And so all the other data and numbers that we see on this tab, you don't want to manually override by typing in them, as that breaks the formula. So if you notice an issue, such as if your defense percentage clearly shows a wrong value, then go back to your workshop and module child sheets and ensure that the level is correctly set there. And in column AC, you will see some summarized totals, such as the total effective health lab time calculated, your current effective health, total wall region lab time, your current wall region per second, and some shortcut links to your child sheets. But okay, then let's try to make sense of the effective health lab path shown to us. So first off, the health lab path, which simply put is the recommended order of health-related lab upgrades, taking into consideration a lot of the data that we have previously inputted about your tower, and taking into consideration the impact and time it takes to complete the respective labs. And so you can see for me, although I'm a glass cannon now and don't really care about my health anymore, if I were to care about my health, then the most efficient would be to first do wall fortification, then a death wave health, and so on. And then by clicking the plus icon in column M, you will see the recommended upgrade path for your health-related workshop enhancements. And if you click the plus icon in column T, you will see similar lab recommendation path, but for your region. And so, while the tool does an amazing job of giving you the most efficient path, Please keep in mind that there are many caveats and scenarios where these recommendations are not as relevant for you. Overall though, the effective health path is the most straightforward and accurate among the 3 recommendation paths, but you can still have plenty of scenarios that may shift the actual order of impact for you. For example, if you want some quick levels in health for some short milestone runs, such as maybe trying wave 300 on tier 15 as effective health build, where your wall will anyways break and you would not be able to maximize your death wave health, you would then be more concerned about your core health. And so, even if the effective paths recommended death wave health as your next upgrade, that would be useless when you anyways can't maximize your death wave health in the respective milestone run. Or, say you're at a stage where the effective paths recommend wall regen to you ahead of regular health regen, but you may instead opt for a bit more health regen because the health regen is a lot shorter time per increase, and for every increase in regen, you get longer runs. For example, in a scenario where your health regen maybe doesn't out-heal your wall just yet. So instead of waiting more days for one big wall regen lab, you instead could increase your runs incrementally, which may net you more cells and coins along the way. And these are just 2 examples. Simply put, while valuing the recommendations provided by the effective paths, have a critical mind to everything and seek to apply everything to your own tower and unique circumstances. Okay, then we're moving on to damage optimization, which is a lot more complicated and has a lot more caveats than the effective health upgrades. And if you have a clean new version of the document, you will also see that disclaimer from the authors that you should not trust these paths blindly. So, don't trust them blindly. Okay, with the disclaimer out of the way, let's make sure to toggle and tweak things to be useful and proper for you. As a start, the first time you encounter this tab, you want to make some changes. And same as for the effective health, you want to update the running time lab speed multiplier in cell L5. Then, in column AL, you need to toggle on range, max rend molt, and shock molt chance, if relevant. If you don't use your tower range bonus from your labs, then you don't want it enabled. And please keep in mind that max rend molt assumes that you're reaching the maximum multiplier. Similarly, the shock molt is also assuming that you're reaching maximum damage. We are not touching any of the other values in column AL because these are all auto-populated from our child sheets. So if you spot any wrong values, locate the respective child sheet and fix it there. And in cell AK3, you specify if you want to assess your farming setup or your tournament setup, including their respective modules. Switching this to the tourney disable perks and switches to tournament module preset. As a result, in the module preset, be sure to complete the tourney modules to use this functionality properly if you haven't already when we talked about this earlier. And then you will take note of various user-specific guesses. And keep in mind that some of these guesses may not be visible or available to you unless applicable. For example, having the respective ultimate weapon. And in this case, we do not have the Poison Swamp related ones because we have not enabled the Poison Swamp beta testing and my Poison Swamp is undeveloped. And similarly, I don't have Galaxy Compressor equipped, so this field is also irrelevant. For most of these user guesses, you can just keep it at the default values. But for example, if you believe that your damage at range, your DPM, is stronger, then you can adjust it accordingly. And for ignore target levels, again, as mentioned for the effective health pad, I personally recommend just leaving that toggled on, as that's a lot more future-proof than leaving it off. The hide ultimate weapon cooldown is simply that. If you want to hide your ultimate weapon cooldowns for some reason, you can enable this. And similarly, you could hide your non-ultimate weapon labs. Do keep in mind though that if you do have Chain Lightning, it does make it so that attack speed doesn't hide, or having Poison Swamp Rend 1+, it makes so that Rend doesn't hide, or having Spotlight Plus makes it so that the range and damage per meter does not hide. The Galaxy Compressor is related to the boss spawns every wave, if you do have Galaxy Compressor equipped. Then there's a few that are a lot more tricky, and again, I would probably just keep this at default values for now, and you could always tweak it in the future. So for Smart Missiles hits on the same target, as the name implies, it's your rough guess of average Smart Missiles and Spotlight Missiles hits on the same target. And similarly, the Smart Missiles enemies inside your Smart Missiles area is just your rough guess of how many enemies are hit inside your Smart Missile and Spotlight Missile radius. And for the Death Wave kill wall enemy hit count per effect wave, again, you can leave this at default for now. Technically, each effect wave enhances the damage dealt by Death Wave due to the effect wave, And it is also a very tricky one to calculate, and so that's why we have this user guess here. But again, you can leave it at the default value. And similarly to the smart missiles for the poison swamp, these are also just rough guesses. And if I were you, I would just leave them at the default value if you do want to enable the poison swamp beta testing. Then there's one field that could be important to you if you do have permanent chrono field and you want to convert some of that speed reduction into damage. Keep in mind that it only includes chrono field so far, and the way it calculates it is that, say if you do have a 50% speed reduction, that's a 2x damage, or if you have a 75% slow, it's a 4x damage. And then finally, there's a user guess where you can input the amount of cash you get on hand just to be able to calculate the project funding's damage boost. And in column AI, you will see some summarized totals, the total effective damage lab time calculated, your current effective damage per second, and some shortcut links to your relevant child sheets, and the option as mentioned for the beta testing of Poison Swamp. And in AQAR row 3 and 4, you will see the breakdown of your current damage between bullet damage and ultimate weapons damage. For most, this will illustrate quite strongly how your ultimate weapons damage does a lot more than your projectiles. And for a lot of the other data, these are all formulas based on your module stats, your cards, ultimate weapons, and so forth. So you don't want to fiddle with these directly, as that breaks the formula that fetches this information from the source child sheets. Then next, let's try to make sense of the effective damage path shown to us. For the damage lab path, it simply put is the recommended order of damage lab upgrades, taking into consideration a lot of the data we have previously inputted about our tower, and taking into consideration the impact and time it takes to complete the respective labs. There are many things one can deduce from this data, including how critical factor lab tends to be somewhat stronger than the damage lab, and so on, which for many is not obvious when playing the game. But also keep in mind that things such as attack speed is undervalued, as it offers more than just damage, such as knockback, rend, chain lightning procs, and so forth. And by clicking the plus icon in column M, you will see the recommended upgrade path for your damage-related ultimate weapons upgrade with stones. And if you click the plus icon in column T, you will see the recommended path for your damage workshop enhancements. And if you haven't yet unlocked workshop enhancement, this will simply just be blank. And finally, if you click the plus icon in column AA, you will see the recommended path for boosting your damage with keys. Okay, so whereas the effective health path is quite accurate and does not make wild assumptions, the paths for effective damage should not be trusted blindly, and the authors of the effective path tool are emphasizing this. As they say, a few things in the game are really hard to compute, such as damage areas, attack speed, and more. So here you also gotta use a bit of game experience and perhaps talk to other members in the community to get their take on the recommended upgrades. And for example, for attack speed, it uses a custom non-precise formula to transform the attack speed into bullets per second. It should be fairly close, but it does not reflect the actual value from the game. But the value does affect attack speed labs and chain lightning damage. As mentioned earlier, the max rend mult and the shock multiplier, they both consider that you're reaching max multiplier. And you might get there, but it may depend on your attack speed for the shock multiplier. But for max rend, you probably get there. And then for smart missiles, I've already touched upon this, but it can't really determine how the damage heat up an area will affect your damage, so it's up to you to fill in those previous user guesses that you think will be correct for you. And for the damage keypad, it of course goes without saying that you have to consider other vault upgrades such as the workshop orb adjuster, bot presets, and other things in the harmony tree that are not included in these considerations. And ultimately, you have to ask yourself what kind of damage it is that you need and for what purpose. Are you currently looking for just overall increased damage output? Are you looking for damage to better kill scatters? Are you looking for better single target damage that kills bosses in tournaments? And so on. So as always, take these recommendations and the paths with a grain of salt. It is an incredible resource with valuable insights, but don't trust it blindly. And even sometimes simply that you just don't have the economy to do the respective lab they suggest. In my case, there's a lot of masteries listed here, but I'm not able to lab all of these initially. It will take some time. Then we're moving on to the Econ optimization, which is also quite complicated and has more caveats than the effective health paths, but arguably a lot less than the effective damage optimization. As a start, the first time you encounter this tab, you want to make some changes, same as with the other previous sheets. Same as for the others, you want to update the running time lab speed multiplier in cell L5. And in column AN, you want to ensure you have enabled or disabled all the relevant perks that you use for your econ farming. And in column AB, you gotta specify the tier you're doing your econ farming on. And you also have to specify if you've purchased the starter packs in the game that gives you increased coin income. The other data points in column AB are automatically added through formulas such as the total lab time, current average coins per kill, theme bonus, and your all coin bonus. Then we're on to the user-specific guesses. First off, the percentage of enemies that die in black hole while it's active. You probably want to adjust this slightly depending on your farming strategy. If you run with a permanent black hole, you could keep this at 100%, but otherwise you may want to adjust this somewhat lower. And similarly, the percentage of enemies that die in golden bot while it's active. You have to consider what is relevant number for you here, but 50% with a solid golden bot is probably fine. Then we got the golden bot sync current ratio. It just tells you what your current ratio is, whereas the decide ratio does affect the stone path. But the current ratio does nothing but tell you the current ratio. Then we got the ignore target levels. Once again, as mentioned before, I would personally recommend just leaving that toggled on. Then there's 2 questions regarding sync. So you tick this if you want to keep this synced. And this will affect the stone upgrade considerations, but not the labs. Then there's a user guess in relation to enemies killed per second in Golden Tower Plus. If you don't have Golden Tower Plus, it will instead show requires Golden Tower Plus. And keep in mind that the average is 7 seconds. But should you ever want to tweak this in the future, you could simply calculate your total Golden Tower Plus kills on average and divide this by your Golden Tower duration. Then there's simply an input for boss spawns, and so you could adjust this depending on what tier you're running or if you're focusing on a tournament. And finally, a user guess in relation to extra orb mastery, which is just a rough estimation of enemies tagged with it. Then let's try to make sense of the effective econ path recommendations shown to us. The Econ lab path, it's simply put, is the recommended order of Econ lab upgrades, taking into consideration all the data we've previously inputted about our tower, and taking into consideration the impact and time it takes to complete the respective labs. And by clicking the plus icon in column M, you will see the recommended upgrade path for your Econ-related ultimate weapon upgrades with stones. And if you click the plus icon in column T, you will see the recommended path for your Econ workshop enhancements, which is basically just the coin bonus enhancements, and your generator module. These 2 things are not necessarily mutually exclusive though, and you tend to upgrade your modules whenever you can. In column AE, you can also see the percentage increase from respective substats, and you can change the parameters that are being compared in cell AF5 for generators and AF14 for core modules. So like this. And this color will indicate the rarity you'll have on your substat as well. And of course, keep in mind that some of the suggestions you may want to ignore or listen harder to depending on your strategy, your farming approach, and so forth. And overall, it does not calculate your sync bonus. And some other things to be aware of is, for example, that Death Wave coins, it assumes each wave is 4-second duration. So if there's 3 waves, it's like its bonus is on for 12 seconds. The black hole coin bonus comes with that user guess percentage we talked about earlier of guessing how many enemies you kill within your black hole. And that pretty much sums up the amazing effective path tool. It can be an incredible, powerful aid to any tower player. However, again, you should not trust this resource blindly, as the authors of the sheets also seek to emphasize many times. And you need to have an holistic view of your own tower. The 3 effective paths are single focus on the areas of health, damage, and econ respectively. But for example, for your tower, if you're farming with an effective health build, then getting more health and regen could be very impactful to your coin gains by enabling you to run further. Or similar for damage if you're farming as a glass cannon. So all this just goes to show that there are many ways and examples where you shouldn't follow the optimizer 100%, but it is, anyways, a solid resource. Then let's discuss some brief frequently asked questions. Like, why are there some crossed lines in the master sheet? Well, those crossed lines means that those values are not changing anything currently in the different paths of the sheet, but it does not mean at all that it's not relevant lab to do. It is just that filling them out will not change anything in the recommendation paths. So if you come across something crossed out, don't sweat it. If you find a bug, who do you contact? Well, if you found an issue, let the people in the dedicated Discord channel know. Are there any benefits to using the web app if you're on desktop? Or basically, use the add-on if on desktop, and if on other device, use the web app. So I talked to Matthew about this, and there's no explicit preference in that regard. The add-on is more straightforward on desktop because it opens a side window in your sheet to do the process, whereas the web app opens a new browser tab, which can be weird for some people. Is there any benefit to using the IDS collection sheet instead of the IDS master? So the IDS master includes more tools and as a result is a more comprehensive and thus arguably more helpful setup. However, the IDS collection benefits people who don't want to manage all the sheets and rather just have one. It breaks modularity and lacks a lot of tools, but some will like it. And in regards to troubleshooting, if you have an error, what do? Well, first, check if you didn't make any mistake, and you can try to revert any of your latest inputs to see if it resolves the issue. For example, maybe you put a too big value that exceeds the limits on a certain lab and so forth. Or if you have a Google Sheet error, you could also just ask in the Discord channel and provide some screenshots or error message that you may see. Also in this regard, this whole video is also turning into a written guide that you can find on the Knowledge Hub, and I will provide a link to that in the description. And I will continue to add frequently asked questions and various troubleshooting tips in that written guide. And I want to provide a big thanks to Matthew and all the people who have contributed to this great project. And you can support Matthew via Buy Me a Coffee and quite Fanta via Buy Me Coffee as well. And links are in the description. And after watching this video, if you have additional questions, suggestions, or simply want to thank the authors of this fabulous resource, be sure to check out the Discord channel dedicated to this resource. That's all for today, and I hope you found it helpful. I will continue to keep a written guide on the Knowledge Hub that will be continuously updated. So if you come across this video in the far future, check out the written guide instead, as it will be kept up to date. Okay, thank you for watching. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't. Cheers. Thanks.